Oh, this is live.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
We don't screw around, man.
Nice.
All three people that'll be watching live.
I did one with New Hampshire PBS about a month ago, and there was a whole control room. There were like it was recorded. It's going to be produced, and all kinds of wow. I didn't think I had anything that important to say that warranted that much effort.
Yeah,
But
this will not be that.
We have been live for 27 seconds. We are on. This is it.
awesome.
Another
Let's get
talent
this
talk.
going.
Absolutely.
All right, I guess I'll make a quick introduction. So
Please
we
do.
are here with Phil Magnuszewski joining us today. So, and I think as we've talked, honestly, probably tech leader, barely covers a proper introduction. Entrepreneur, innovation strategist, AI community builder, and one of the leading voices helping shape the AI adoption here in New Hampshire. Phil's the founder of Disrupt AI, founder of AI New Hampshire Initiative, board member for the AI Task Force leader with the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and currently serves as the executive innovation leadership role with Infuse Innovations as well. So at this point, Phil's basically the Swiss Army knife of technology leadership, entrepreneurship, and AI strategy. I think it's probably the proper introduction and why we wanted to have him join us today. So Phil, thank you for hopping on and give you an opportunity to give us a little introduction to your background and what's led you to drive the AI in New Hampshire focus and can elaborate a little bit more on the market and what you're seeing and go from there.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of tell the story and to kind of get the word out in terms of what's going on in New Hampshire as well. So I did some math the other day, and at 28 years in the tech industry, went by in the blink of an eye. I spent probably the last decade in what I'll say is applied emerging technologies, and most of that's with artificial intelligence. Um, I, as you mentioned, the Chief Innovation Officer at Infuse Innovations. That's where I do a lot of my day-to-day hands-on stuff. And I'm not a developer, but I spend a lot of time with our engineering development teams. I do a lot of advising and consultings with executive leadership to help them figure out how and where they might use some of these technologies to help bring their strategies and visions for what they want their business to look like to life. As I think most of us on this call, as we get further along in our careers, it's like how do you give back? How do you continue to have impact? Those kind of things, and that's what drove me to a lot of the things I'm doing today that are outside of that. I founded Disrupt AI, which is kind of a think tank, an opportunity to use like moonshot thinking to think about things in a 10x way. How do we improve our communities? How do we improve the world around us with emerging technologies? I'm doing some interesting things in that space we can chat about later if you guys want to do that. A lot of the work that we're seeing today through AI in New Hampshire was kind of driven out of the Tech Alliance as well, the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, right? So being part of the AI task force, driving that, understanding what people are looking for and kind of where the understanding of the technology is, where it isn't, where there are fears, where there are opportunities. So, we had, I think, about 18 roundtables over the past year and got some really good feedback. And then, part of my fear with AI in particular was around the haves and have-nots, right? We had a huge digital divide with when the internet came out, right? And we still see that across the country, in parts of the country today. AI is one of those technologies that's going to accelerate what humans are capable of doing, right? Expanding that, enhancing that, if you will. And it's happening at such a rapid pace that if we don't help democratize accessibility to it, understanding of it, and just plain old literacy around it, there's going to be a huge part of the population that's going to be left behind, and that's not going to be any good for our communities, the state here, if we're not addressing that now. So that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, like I said, there's a lot of things going on. Just trying to help have impact wherever I can with emerging technologies.
My
Phil,
first
I'm
question
sorry.
is, what do
Phil,
you do
actually,
with...
one thing, Phil, you were on mute. Can you repeat that whole thing,
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You made me laugh. That was good.
I was going to say, my first question is, what do you do with all your free time? I mean, obviously, you've got nothing going on.
Just chatting about that.
I feel like I now need to go get 4 more jobs just to feel like I should be on this call. Like, unbelievable all the stuff you're involved in.
We were just chatting and my empty net syndrome, right? My youngest left for school back in August of this past year, and it's been, you try to fill the void. And we were talking about, all the club sports, all the moving around, the traveling. I think it prepared me for this moment, quite frankly. But eventually we'll taper off. But for right now, it's kind of filling that space.
And I had to go through multiple, administrative assistants and EAs to get this, on Phil's schedule. So thankful he was able to squeeze us in.
But GJ, once Alyssa and Gabby go to college in the fall, you and I will be real busy. I guess we'll just start.
We'll crank it up. We'll figure something out.
Right.
Oh man.
Phil, I was going to ask you though. I read an article you wrote recently, and it was talking about how AI is going to need, like there's finance CFOs, there's marketing leaders, and everyone, and AI is going to need someone to be in charge of it, not just a thing or a line item. Talk more about that, because I think that's fascinating, because I don't think a lot of people are thinking that way.
Yeah, that was the hard truth about AI article. I think there were a couple things in that article. I'll address the direct question first, though, is I think what we're seeing in the marketplace today is really folks dabbling in AI, right? Because they're unsure. They're unsure because the technology is changing really quickly. And they're unsure in terms of what that's going to mean in terms of, when it comes to return on investment, right? And there's risks associated with it, and there's tolerance for risk differences across different organizations. So the point of saying that, like the organizations that are successful with it, that are doing well with it, like it's a stake in the ground, it's a strategy, and we need to build it in our DNA. So just like you have a department or a person or a group that's focused on the finances of your organization, the marketing in your organization, you have to have someone, whether it's a person, a partner, right, that you can bring in to help with that as well, is another place that works. But someone's got to be focused on it from the perspective that we're not just sprinkling AI into like things we're doing today. It's a great place to experiment. But if you want the real value, what AI does is it helps you, gives you the opportunity to rethink and reinvent business processes, the business itself, and in a grander scale, like the industries that you're in as well. So, and in order to do that, you've got to say, look, we're going to do it. It's going to require a lot of work, a lot of effort. I think what people don't realize, it actually costs money to get into it, right? You got to spend money and do those things as well, but you've got to be serious about it at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah. And what we're seeing is like experimentation is easier to do. And it's easy to say, like, Jay, you're going to go use a Copilot, or you're going to have an enterprise version of ChatGPT or Claude, and go in, and you as an individual can go and be, as an individual can be productive, right? Using it. And because you're interested in it, you're curious, and you're able to kind of rework your daily life around that. But when you start thinking about using a tool across an organization, it's a different way of thinking, right? Because your data, I mean, almost everything, everything, the conversation starts with AI, always comes back to data. Like, what does your data look like? If you're using Microsoft ecosystem, what does your SharePoint environment look like? And there's always a curation process that needs to happen in order for AI to work correctly. Then there's the whole prompt engineering, the data governance. Like, there's a lot of things that need to happen along the way to get really good outputs at a consistent level that's useful to the organization as a whole. And that's the real hard part. That's the part that takes time and effort and money.
And as you're partnering, as you're talking to companies and organizations around New Hampshire, is there one niche or one industry that's coming to you more than others? Is it the university or colleges? Is it the small companies? I mean, is there one that's going crazy more in New Hampshire than the others?
In New Hampshire, I think, surprisingly, I think that there are some regional banks that are doing a pretty good job with that. But they're looking at it more from, when we say AI, it's more than just the generative AI, right? There's AI in terms of algorithms and fraud detection and those kind of things as well. But I think some of especially the medium-sized regional banks, have governance structures already in place, right? So they know how to bring technologies in, they know how to evaluate them, they know how they're going to roll those out across the department. If you talk specific about generative AI, I think where people are really getting into it is the services industries, right? whether that's legal, whether that's accounting, marketing. Digital marketing is huge right now in that space, and this technology is really turning that consulting services, those kind of things as well. They're really interested in moving forward with it quickly. But there's still, like I said, all that, they're moving forward and getting into it quickly, but organizations are still struggling with how do I embed it right into the business.
Right.
Phil, have you seen it come through more specific departments? Like, is there a leader that you think is driving it? So one thing we've seen is some of our customers have implemented like hack weeks, right, and just brought it in as a whole. But is it more so marketing? Is it more so sales? Like, where have you seen a consistent trend from any of the companies that you've been talking to, or is it more from the top down or anything like that?
So it's consistently inconsistent. Sure. I mean, that's the best way to say it. I mean, I can't tell you the number of, all of the clients that I get to speak to, the folks that are coming to the AI New Hampshire events, the folks who are at the roundtables that we have with the task force, like there are some commonalities. Like, I think it depends on maturity of the organization, Ricky. So I mentioned, like, if there is a governance committee in place, it's being driven like through there, right, kind of thing, because there is a structure in place for that. But beyond that, like if there isn't that kind of structure in place today, it's coming from all over the organization. Sometimes the CEO says we're doing AI, and then the organization is saying, okay, what does that mean? I can't go buy a SKU that gives me AI, right, kind of thing. Or it's someone on the front lines who is leveraging maybe something that isn't even authorized, right? Someone has a personal Claude subscription or a chat GPT, and they're using it because they know it's helpful, but the organization is unaware of it, right? And then you get pockets across an organization. I think, marketing, I think, is probably the most low risk, like one of the lower risk places in an organization, because cranking out a data sheet or a sales playbook or white paper or social media posts and that kind of stuff, you can do that quickly with it. And so I would say marketing is probably, I would be surprised if any marketing departments aren't using it today, or marketing individuals, if you will. And they're typically not overstaffed, right? So they're trying to get more content out, churn through a lot of that stuff. And I think that's where you see a lot of places or a lot of organizations start, even if it's not sanctioned.
Yeah. Well, that's the governance part is interesting, right? Because the companies that I've talked to, that's their challenge. People are using it different ways, and no one knows how each other's using it, right? They're just, someone's really good at it, and they're playing with ChatGPT, and they use it to do whatever they're doing to enhance their workflow. But it's not a company-wide initiative. It's just they're doing it. And it's like they don't even know where to go to start. I wonder how much training is happening out there, and like how to use it. This is the best way, that sort of thing.
And you know what? The training, that's a really interesting, and we can talk about kind of rogue or shadow IT in a minute as well. But the training is a really interesting topic. I've had tons of conversations in the past month about this. And there's kind of a divergence of approaches. I think historically what we've done is we're going to train you on a tool, show you how to use it, and go off and use it, kind of thing. One of the, I think, newer ideas or thoughts around this is like, we're going to train you not on the tools necessarily out of the gate, but we're going to train you on AI. Like, what is it? How should I be thinking about it? How do I know how it works? How do I understand that? How do I know where and when to use it, right? What shouldn't I be using it for? What are the guardrails I need to have in place? How do I critically look at the outputs of what's coming out and then validate that, and using it more as like that intern or digital assistant versus something that is going to be like the authoritative source on something, right? You as the individual, it's your job. You're accountable for everything that you use and then, pull from it and then use going forward. So I think we're going to see, because the tool stuff, like when it's something that's this transformative, it's not sticking, I guess is the best way, right? So it's not until people change their mindset around how they're going to use AI, how it fits into the organization, that will become more prevalent across the DNA of the organization. And also, I think, Jay, what we're seeing in that space too is that when people are trained and coached that way, they can become, and sometimes more entrepreneurial, meaning that they can now understand, okay, these are the capabilities of it, we've always been doing things this way,
Right.
right? We have inputs, we have outputs, and then we have a process. Now, what if I say we have inputs, we need outputs, and then start with a blank sheet of paper? Like, how can I rewrite that business process, right, and change things so I can leverage this technology versus someone who's just been trained to say, okay, look, you type something in here, you get an output, you can do images, you can do video, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the greater thinking or the more holistic thinking around that I think is more important for us to be training on. Yeah. And then I'll say, going back to the data governance side of things, we're at the consulting firm, so Infuse Innovations, we do a lot of work in the Microsoft ecosystem. So one of the things we're always talking to our clients about is like, if you're concerned about that, there are tools out there, right? And Microsoft has their purview, their data governance stuff. So we can actually watch and understand who's using those tools. We can lock those tools down, or meaning that we can have a user not be able to use those tools, or we can have them use those tools even if they're not widely deployed, and then maybe say, look, you can't cut and paste into that, right, from corporate resources and those kind of things as well. So there's ways to address that, and I think the audience should be aware of that. And it's not on Google. I'm sure Google has their version of that, and there are other tools, third-party tools out there too. But the shadow IT piece of it is a real concern. Especially if you have, let's say you're in healthcare, for example, where there's high risk associated with loss of data that you want to get control on.
Yeah, that's interesting, the shadow IT piece. Like how would that rear its ugly head? Like what would that look like if it's gone sideways?
Well, the problem, if it goes sideways, likely you don't even know about it, right? That's the first problem with it, right? But let's say that you have maybe customer information, right? Maybe someone is putting a proposal or building a proposal for a client in a third-party tool that is using that data for training, right? Like a lot of the free models, and there are people using the free models, that's your information you're putting in that system is being used to train the next version of that model, right? So I always say, at a minimum, if you're going to be using those tools, get at least on a paid subscription, because you can toggle that off in your settings for most of the major providers, right? But the fact is that the truth is you're not going to know about it. And what you're going to have is, I would say, maybe IP leakage, right? Or PII leakage, or something that you're not going to want out in the internet, let alone being used to train a model.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You kind of don't realize that this information is going somewhere, and then everyone else is going to kind of have access to it based on it learning. Which is scary.
Yeah, and then heaven forbid, like the next model that comes out, someone types in, I want to put together. Oh, by the way, here's an example of, and upgrade your customer, right?
Yeah.
But the odds are remote, but I think that there's it's just good data governance practice to avoid that from happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we met a month or so ago, you and I talked about your kind of future of work concept and where you see that going. I found it fascinating, even the part where like if AI takes away some part of someone's job, is the human being ready to be on all the time? We were talking about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Where do you see work going down the road?
This is so hard to predict. You can throw it.
Well, we're going to hold you to it. This is recorded. It's live. We're going to play it in 10 years. You better be right.
No, I think I think a few things. So I think that you have your large tech companies who are incented to sell as much of their product as possible, right? Who are out there claiming that all jobs are going to be white collar jobs are going to be gone in 2 years, right? You have that side of it.
Yeah.
I think the reality of that, so anyone who's tried, and we go back to like saying how hard it is to do it, like AI is a slog, to get it implemented, to do it right, to get your data right, to get the outputs right, to get people, like it's not happening overnight. There's no magic wand that gets you from point A to point B, right? It's going to take years for that to happen. And I think, it's going to be interesting to watch because we all, as business owners, we have agency in terms of how we're going to implement it in our organization, right? So we can think about redesigning the organization in a way that, yeah, we may not use as many, human employees as we used to, but we kept the employees that maybe the base, and we grew the company by using artificial intelligence, right? We have the digital assistants. So I think what I would like to see and what I'm hoping for, and what we're seeing short term anyways, is a collaborative engagement with AI with employees, right? So maybe, and we're seeing it already with like students coming out of college, like there's not a lot of jobs available for entry level, right? Because a lot of the AI stuff can do entry level work today. I also think, and I think what we were talking about when we met last was, what's the real impact of AI on somebody who's using it on a regular basis, right? How much, the cognitive overload or cognitive load that you have when you're using AI is super, super high, right? Because, typically we would do like simple tasks, like you might clean up a spreadsheet or do whatever. And it was a way to kind of decompress and get your thoughts together and just like, it's busy work, right? But my brain's not working really heavy. What happens now when AI is doing all those things for us? And what we're left with is like the real cognitively intensive work, the thinking, the thought process, the orchestrating even AI pieces as well. Look, I have a question, like, can you do that for 8 hours a day? Right.
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't think you can. I don't think you can. So I think there's also going to be, where are the expectations of the employer if I'm investing all this money in AI? I want people to be more productive. And, Jay, we're going to give Jay all these digital assistants, and Jay can now work from 6 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night and do the work of 3 people. Meanwhile, Jay is like drooling at the end of the day because
I'm doing that now.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to find out ways to think less, not more. Phil, this is bad news.
That's it. I think that's the biggest fear. And what we're seeing is, and it's not 100% like social media, but there's an addictive quality, I think, to AI, meaning that, okay, I'm just going to check in and have it go do something. And you do that throughout the course of the day. So the people we talk to, it's like, okay, they're starting early in the morning, they're getting out of bed, they're getting in, having it do something, but their brain's on at that point. And they're doing that right up into the point they go to bed at night. Say, hey, because I wanted to have maybe go off and do some things while I'm sleeping, kind of stuff, right? So the disconnect from work when you couple individuals with AI, I think is something we all have to think really carefully about. Yeah, that's a scary one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when we talked about it, it's another part of this that I had never really even thought of, which is, if you take away those busy tasks that will let you kind of shut it down for 20 minutes at a pop, what happens? You just feel like, well, no problem. We'll just keep going and going and going. But at some point, because right, the social media piece is an interesting correlation because that is something that, the doom scrolling, like you get into the scrolling and, the next thing you know, you've been on it for an hour and a half and you've been kind of focused on it. It's like you're not shutting down,
And the more you engage with it, like, especially like the voice component of it, right? Like I'll be in my car or walking around the house, you think about something like, hey, would love to like follow that rabbit hole a little bit. And before you know it, it's like an hour later and you have this conversation back and forth, and it's like, holy crow. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful tool, but like I think much like social media, it arrived on the scene with a lot of training on that side of it. Like, how do you integrate it into your life, right?
Yeah.
That's not talked about much at all.
Yeah. You'd almost think that's part of the governance piece on the individual side. Almost like some general rules of, how you should engage and how you should engage, which kind of goes down like the social, kind of well-being side of the fence. You know what I mean? Because it is, pretty soon, we're just going to talk to it, and that's our only friend. Like we're just going to have conversations all day.
I was watching CNBC yesterday morning, and I forget the gentleman's name. He was taking that stance on it. He was pretty hardline stance on it, saying, hey, look, we know AI is here, but when you're talking about kids and going like K-12, Like he was like, there should be no AI in the classroom, right? Because what we should be teaching kids during that time is learning processes, those kind of things. But really was more about personal engagement, working on things together, during lunch and recess, like having kids play together and have conversations. And this was a problem well before that with social media, but his point, like even like limiting computer use in the classroom, like we're losing a lot of our humanity as these technologies get more and more advanced, because it's easy to get locked into a device or into an application. Yeah,
And yet, the curriculum that the teacher made came from AI.
In some cases, yeah.
So,
Technically, it feels.
yeah.
I mean, what is the stance on that? When should it be introduced? Should it be introduced in schools? Senior year, junior year? I mean, college. I know my son's graduating in a few days here from UNH, and they've integrated into some of their classes. I mean, they really are teaching them how to use it. Which I on the surface I feel like is a good thing, but I don't know.
I think there are smarter people than me in terms of cognitive development that will chime in and eventually help figure that piece out. I think as people get closer to entering the workforce, I think it has to be introduced, right? So college is a no-brainer. Like to not be using AI in college is just ridiculous to me.
Right.
I think colleges are tasked and under pressure to figure out what does that look like? Like how to make sure the students are learning and not cheating their way through college, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's hard. Like that's really hard. And I talked to some folks at UNH recently about this, and it's easy to say, well, we can put together case studies and group assignments where you work together on a problem and solve it together. But what happens when you're running a class of 250 students, right? If you grade that, like it doesn't scale that model. And we've seen blue books come back into vogue with some colleges as well, right? Which again, I get a shiver down my spine thinking about the whole blue book essay writing and things like that from back in the day. But honestly, I think, and this is just Phil's opinion, like K through 7, K through 8, like through middle school, I think let's focus on developing the cognitive side of the student and the socialization side of a student. I think once you get into high school, I think you should start seriously be including that in, because I don't even know what role colleges and universities are going to play 10 years from now, right? So I think there'll be kids coming out of high school that'll be ready for the workforce, depending on how engaging and what they're using AI for, how they're training with it, those kind of things as well.
That would be a major shift if all of a sudden colleges were not necessary, right? Or people didn't need to go. I mean, because the amount of money there's soaking out of everybody, right? You'd think we're going to look for any reason not to send a kid to college if this is where it goes, which is mind-boggling to think about. With all the universities, and it's just like ingrained in us. You got to go to school and you go to college and then you get a job, and it'd be kind of fascinating if all of a sudden AI stopped that or created another avenue.
I think universities are under pressure regardless, right? I think that there's this population cliff that's coming for students, right? Where the number of students that are graduating from high school is drastically dropping, right? So there's less demand for colleges just by a population perspective. I think you're seeing a lot of community colleges try to figure out how can I leverage AI in the programs I need to upskill students for the workforce, where there are jobs that don't need a university degree, right? We've seen jobs kind of, especially in the tech sector, right? Google does, Google and Microsoft and the big tech firms offer like project management programs, right? You can go in, take those programs, get certified, those kind of things, and then use that as a way to get into the tech industry. So there's a whole bunch of things that are happening in higher ed that I think are putting a lot of pressure on those institutions. And it will be interesting to see what shakes out in terms of how they evolve, because they know they have to evolve, but what does that look like going forward? And what roles do high schools play? Do community colleges play? Do vocational programs play, and those kind of things as well? I think that whole area is going to be redefined.
It's fascinating to think about that. Ricky, you mentioned Hack Week. Educate someone who doesn't know what the heck that is. What is
so large organizations that we've seen that have basically pulled the company together and said, every department, let's bring brains together here. Who is utilizing AI? Where have you seen success? Like just getting the communication fluid throughout the entire org and getting everybody together and cross-functionally finding ways to adapt it in different areas. And I mean, again, a couple that have been week-long, if not multi-day, just tucked away in a silo, working together, trying to find ways to just improve or get everybody to adopt it. Because I think we continue to see that there are champions, right? There are people that are using it, like Phil was saying, even in personal time or even professionally, that just aren't vocal about it. So finding those wins and then pulling I guess the ones that have been driving it more together into a room to find ways that they can implement it in other areas of the business too.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna, Ricky, that was great, because I think what you called out too is that people think, hackathons or hack weeks is just about hands-on keyboard. But it's not, right? To your point, it's rethinking how you might do a specific marketing process or a financial process or an operations process. It's getting folks to think about whiteboarding how things might be or how might look, those kind of things, as well as the traditional hackathon stuff where we can now go out and create some things, right? Some proofs of concept around things to do that as well. But I think that's a really important point, that it's not just the hands-on keyboard kind of work.
And definitely another thing too with companies rewarding their staff, financially as well, some sort of incentive to be the driver or to find cost savings or whatever it might be, but just to continue the conversation and keep it fluid and at the top of mind for everybody. So it's been interesting to see that.
Yeah.
I was going to take a step back with you too, Phil. We'll rewind a bit here, because obviously you spent years, I won't say decades, but years in technology leadership and innovation. But was there a moment where you realized like AI wasn't just another tech trend and you felt like you're ready just to fully dedicate yourself, your time and leadership towards driving that, especially in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so I mean the chat GPT moment was the one for sure. Like when I saw that and then what occurred over the next 12 months, I think that was like, holy crap, like we have to do something to help democratize what's going on here. Because you're always, the people that are curious are going to be involved, they're going to get engaged, but like my mother, my sister who's a nerd, like our kids, like the communities at large, like there's still a large percentage of the population that isn't involved in the technology because they don't understand it, they don't know how to access it, they don't know what it is, kind of thing. I would say the first inkling of this happened before that, like 2019, 2020, when I started to see a lot of the AI being able to be consumed as a service, like through Azure, through Google, those kind of things, where you didn't need to be a data scientist. There were kind of pre-built models that you can then retrain with your own data, right? And you can get that off the shelf. You can get it as a service, and it's easily accessible. So it was the accessibility side of it, saying, hey, look, because AI has been around for 70 years. Like this is the 70th anniversary this year from the Dartmouth Summer Conference back in '56. And so we've had a lot of stops and goes along the way, but it was, as we saw accessibility get easier for the technology, it's like, holy crap, like, okay, now it's going to be in everyone's hands and available, but we're giving out this incredibly powerful tool with almost zero instructions on how to use it, right? And for me, that was the tipping point that said, man, if we're going to have, I would say, fair and democratized access and usage of it, and people are welcome to decide whether they're going to use it going forward or not, but to give at least people an understanding of it so they can decide intelligently about how they want to use it, we have to do that, and we have to do that as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Could you, for viewers that aren't familiar with AI in New Hampshire, and I think, as you mentioned, all different age groups, right? I feel like as I've gone to some more recent events, I've noticed people just out of industry, right? Not anyone related to tech or innovative strategies or anything like that. It's been even just people coming in from healthcare or elderly folks that just were curious and wanted to learn.
Yeah.
Like, I guess open the door, welcome, all walks of life to come attend this thing. And if you could just elaborate a little bit more on what the focus is during those meetings, or even the innovation labs that you do as well, just to cast a wider net.
Sure. So just for those who aren't aware, AI New Hampshire, the mission is to help New Hampshire become one of the most AI literate states in the country, right? And that's across the board. So we're working through, and I'll kind of pre-announce it a little bit here. We're looking to leverage the library system across the state of New Hampshire, because there's a library in every community across. And how do we enable those libraries to be centers of education around AI literacy, right? So we're going to be using that. Our goal over the next 3 years is to try to impact about 35,000 residents across the state, right? And that's getting at least some level of AI literacy, like you've attended a workshop, you've come to the library, there are office hours, those kind of things as well. And because like our feeling is that you have to be out in each and every community in order to make that happen, right? So there's, and Ricky, you've seen this before. It's one thing to share use cases and what it is and some of the subject areas that surround it. But in these events that we've kind of curated, I talk about it as being a safe space to talk about AI. So regardless of your level, you can come in and ask any question you want, talk about what you're afraid of, talk about what you're excited about, share like I'm using it this way. And to me, that's the funnest part of those conversations. I also encourage folks who are coming out to these things that like you don't have to not address like the elephants in the room, right? Meaning that let's talk about some of the more controversial areas around AI, like copyright infringement. Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, how we don't have, I was doing a presentation yesterday and someone brought this to my attention and they're like, we talk about having AI that's written like for the English language, as it were, right? But there was a gentleman who was from a Native American tribe and said, look, we have our own language. It's phonetic in nature. There are nuances across different, like there's a whole level of population that doesn't have access to these models because they're not built for them, right? There's a whole different language structure associated with it, right? So we want to have conversations. How do we bring those to the forefront? Because I think we collectively have to talk through this together in order to figure out what we want it to do versus it just being thrusted or foisted upon us, right? Data center. Let's talk about data centers. That's kind of a hot topic and the environmental impact of AI and those kind of things. So we're trying to create those forums, those spaces for anyone, regardless of your level, to come in and have a conversation, to learn something, to share something, but to really just foster those conversations in an intelligent way.
They've done a great job with it. Welcome everybody to get out and at least check out one. I think you'll be back, and obviously the various topics and panels and such that you have. There's, even as you mentioned, Boston Dynamics and more of the robotics and humanoid piece, right? I think there's multiple layers to that.
Yeah, we're always looking for volunteers too. I think this is so awesome about New Hampshire. Like there's so many people willing to help out. Like there are typically 1 or 2 people at every event that say like, this is great. How can I help? Like can I present? Can I help coordinate? Can I do all these kind of things? And I think the special thing about New Hampshire, like people love this state. And so what we're trying to do is kind of marry that with like, there's this way to innovate and the world is going to change regardless of who is involved. So we want to get as many people involved so they can have impact on what the world looks like 5 years, 10 years down the road from now.
I was actually going to ask you that, Phil. What, I guess 5 years down the line, what would make you look back and say that, it was a success, AI in New Hampshire, or adapting AI? I know you said around 35,000 users, right? So what, 2.5% of the population? Like, is there an end goal in mind and just kind of going along with it at this point? Or?
Yeah, so you never know what kind of numbers you're going to get out of this, but I think we want to set those as targets, right? So we know how to support and staff and fund those things. For me, it's a win down the road, 5 years, 10 years down the road, if regardless of the final number of folks that we reach, that we're in every community, there is an understanding of what the technology is capable of, and that those communities, those individuals are actively able to discern and decide where and how they want to use this technology. That's the win. Like, that's the thing. Like, I want to just enable people to make intelligent decisions about it and figure out how to way to use it that benefits as many people as possible.
I think the safe space part too is important because I'm in a place myself where I don't trust anything online anymore. Like you go online, you're trying to find. I mean, I think I watched Michael Jackson sit next to Raiders of the Lost Ark and Harrison Ford, and it looked real to me. So I mean, so it's just like, where do you go to get like real information and real
Yeah.
insight as to what works and what doesn't work? Because again, there's so much misinformation out there. So I think that part of it's super helpful.
It's true. No, that's a really good point, Jay. I think that's I get so much out of talking to people at these events. There are some really smart people here in the state, and folks that do a really good job at explaining super complex topics. Like I always say, explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old, right? Because if you can't understand it at that level, like I feel like you're gonna miss the boat with almost everybody else, right? Kind of deal. So being able to say, hey, look, I heard this. What have you heard? And someone may have heard. So it's a chance to kind of corroborate kind of what you're seeing with the technology use cases or what it can do, or to your point about, a lot of this stuff can be made up and on social media feeds. And it's I hear people say stuff that's crazy and it's like, no, that's just not true. Like,
well, right. Yeah, I mean, I read the other day that the data center piece you were talking about, there is using up all the water in the world. I mean, is that true? Is it not true? Is it semi-true? Like, what's happening with the water in these data centers? I don't know where to go to find the real story. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point. I was talking to some folks at UNH today about this in their engineering group, because I think that there are some larger conversations we're trying to pull together. One of them being the data center thing. So what's the reality of it, right? From an environmental standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, architecturally. I mean, everyone thinks these big data centers, but you don't have to architect the big data center. You could have regional small data centers that are in a repurposed municipal building, right? And then have connectivity. I mean, so there's different ways to do it. But and again, by democratizing the understanding of this, like, let's get people out to have conversations, to talk through it. And there may be no answer that's available or obvious today, but if enough of us talk through it and think through it, we might come to something that says, oh my gosh, we can do this in a way that is minimally disruptive to the environment, gets us the compute resources that we need to drive AI adoption across the state, those kind of things, right? I think you'll see that from AI in New Hampshire over the course of the next year, trying to drive some of the larger topics and dive into those a little bit more to stimulate the conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Where are we at? Oh, actually, I was going to ask about Disrupt AI. What's the focus there? It sounds Chief Disruption Officer. I'm going to change my title to that because that's the coolest title I've seen.
I like to break stuff, and I can't do it in a corporate setting typically. So I work with probably a half a dozen folks, and it's a collective, right? It's a think tank where we're trying to rethink things that we believe are important to the community at large. One of the things that it's in proof of concept now that came out of there was the Center for Applied Technologies, right? So meaning that there should be an organization here in the state that allows for low risk experimentation with the technology, right? AI being one of them, but it could be drone technologies, it could be AR, VR, quantum is coming along pretty quickly now. So we want a channel for organizations, government, or public or private, to come in and say, hey, look, I have an idea. I need somewhere to test it. And also it's an opportunity to bring students into the workforce as well, right? So we're partnering and with domain experts, bringing in students to work together on specific projects, right? So I think it's kind of a neat thing that came out of it. There's also a platform we're working on called Legislative Lens, which is helping with legislative transparency, right? And so we have 400 and some odd legislators here in the state of New Hampshire, and they go through at least 100 different bills that they're looking at in any session. How do they understand that, right? How do you, and using generative AI in particular, we can give them a summary of what's going on. We can allow them to ask specific questions about a piece of legislation. The idea with the platform is then how does that compare to what's on the books now? Can we look forward and see what the potential implication, can we model out how that might impact a community, those kind of things as well. So using this technology to have impact where, like, I'm a big fan of transparency. Like, how do we get more transparent, right, with the stuff that's important to us? How do we become better citizens, right? And we can do that by better understanding what impact these laws or regulations that are being proposed are going to mean at the end of the day. You know, the idea kind of sparked, it was last year, it was the big beautiful bill was being passed.
Yeah.
I was sitting with my parents and they're always asking, what's this AI thing? What's this AI thing? And I'm like, well, let me show you this. Because they're like, who knows what's in this bill, right? It's 1,000+ pages and this and that. I'm like, what's downloaded? We brought in the ChatGPT, and I'm like, let's just ask some questions on it, thing, right? And you can go through, and they were able to summarize it, ask questions about, specific pieces of it, and allows them to naturally just drill down to it to better understand what's in it. So rather than just hearing what you hear on the news, right, they're able to now intelligently kind of form their own opinions, right, about what's in it and what the potential impact is going to be. So those are the kind of the things we're working on. And I absolutely, for me, that's like my playground, my sandbox to kind of play around with ideas. Another thing is we're looking to bring, how do you maintain historical information over the course of time? That could be stories, it could be events, it could be people, it could be locations, those kind of things, leveraging AI, right? Because we have, like, if you look at some of the things from the past, like we may have a letter from someone who was written, to a fiance or something in the 1776, right? For example, like, can we start to piece together a more robust understanding of our past with the technology, right? And then also be able to look at it from different perspectives, right? So yeah, we're kind of exploring some of those things that are, how do we better understand what's going on around us? Yeah.
But I think that you mentioned it before, Phil, is the gap between all of this technology that's at everybody's hands. And Jay and I will be the first to admit how bad we are at using it, between it being available and knowing how to use it. You talk about your mother jumping on ChatGPT, or me trying to teach my 70-year-old mom and dad there's nobody teaching them how to use it. No one taught other than getting on and playing with it, figuring it out yourself. But there's no ChatGPT 101 class to learn how to use that, or Claude, or anything like that. And that, if you don't know how to use it, then the old folks, or even Jay and I don't forget it. If you're not going to teach me, then I'm not. If I don't know how to use it, I'm going to stay away from it. But there's just nobody out there teaching people how to use this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking to address. At least part of it. One of the channels for people through AI in New Hampshire, right, is to make that available to them as well. And I think the irony of AI, and I was chatting to a group about this yesterday, is that folks our age, like, there's a whole lot of experience, there's a lot of wisdom that we learn through blood, sweat, and tears over the course of time, and there's so much locked up in here that when you take that and you marry that with the productivity and things you can do with AI, like, that is such a winning formula.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you can call BS on some of the outputs, and what questions to ask, where to take the conversation with these things, versus someone fresh out of school is just going to see this as a tool. And, sometimes they think, oh, I can be an expert on this in a day kind of thing. But we all know it took us, 25 years to get to this point where you can actually, have a better sense on the nuances, right, around things, right? So to your point about how do we train folks that are, especially have all this information trapped in their head, and it would be really interesting, David, to kind of figure out how do we capture that in some way.
Right.
It could be that it's something we take up with Disrupt as well, because I think that's really an interesting opportunity there. Yeah.
It's not a fad. It's not going anywhere.
It's not the Hulu.
Much as Jay thought it was, no, this will go away. Nope, it's not going away.
Yeah.
I was at an IBM conference last week, and the other one I'm keeping an eye on is quantum. I always you hear things like, is it close? Is it far? There are some researchers that think we're going to have usable quantum by the end of this year.
And that is what?
Yeah, I can nod my head and pretend I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm not going to fake it.
You know what the joke is about quantum? I had someone who actually knows about like really knows about quantum mention this to me. It's like anyone who says they know quantum doesn't know quantum.
Good. Okay, feel better already.
Like there's so many things, but it's a different way of computing, right? So we have high performance computers. So think of a computer that can do massively parallel calculations in a whole different way, right? It's really powerful, really fast. What it allows you to do, and where they're talking about the opportunities is in like material science, protein generation, creation, looking for pharmaceuticals, how to quickly go through and say which components of a drug can I pull together to address this particular disease, kind of thing, right? And to do so, and some of the calculations, like if you use a traditional high performance computer, might take 1,000 years, right? It may take a day or a week on a quantum computer to do those things. So simulations of things like that. So it's going to impact, I think, a lot of it takes a lot of time to research through trial and error, materials or drugs, or in the case of cancer research, what proteins might be more effective against particular types of cancer as well. So that is really, really crazy exciting in terms of what that's going to bring to the table.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for building that?
Skynet is right around the corner, Jay. Skynet is coming.
There are a number of folks that are building them. There are independents that are out there. Microsoft has a version of it. IBM, Google, your big players are doing that, but there's a bunch of other ones that are out there that are in this space. It's still not perfect. Like they're still early. We're still in the early days of it, but I think they're getting close on a couple of things.
Well, and you think like by the end of the year or in a year or something like that, you'll see some inroads?
Yeah. I think, it's IBM touting that they're going to be close. So you take vendor stuff with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I think in the next few years, I think we'll start to see some benefits from it, for sure. And I think the big scary one is not benefit, but all your traditional encryption can be cracked by a quantum computer.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So there's new frameworks and things that are being proposed for it. But yeah, anything that's has been done on, I would say, traditional or classic encryption, it'll easily be cracked by a quantum computer.
Okay, so goal number one: let's keep this away from the cyber terrorists. Let's make sure they don't know how to use it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. And again, there are people that are super educated on quantum computing in here, especially in New Hampshire. There are a couple of folks that are really good on it. But I throw that out there because I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to keep my eye on, because they don't always work like hand in hand per se, but you get the benefits of AI and the benefits of quantum, and there's a lot of really cool, interesting things that'll come out as a result of that. That's why it's hard to say what work's going to look like, I think, even 5 years from now, when you start looking at those things.
Yeah. Whew. All right.
Yeah.
Lots to think about. More sleepless nights ahead.
That's why I work. I don't sleep, Jay, because there's too many concerns around some of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So now what we learned on this call, I got to get 3 more jobs, get on 2 more boards. I've got to worry about my encryption. I don't know what I'm doing with AI. Oh, that's awesome. This has been very good.
And a nifty title for you, Jay. We need a better title for you.
Yeah, I love the Chief Disruption Officer. That's going up right after this call.
Right.
And Ricky, you need to shave your head.
We'll work on that.
Let's go.
So any events you want to shout out before we wrap up?
Next week. Yeah, we have an event in Salem next week on AI in regulated environments. Specifically, we have a speaker coming in and talk about AI being used in medical device companies. And then there's a social event by Up in Concord. It's one of those events where I think, Jane, you and I met, just a chance to kind of get to talk to other folks, those kind of things. And then there's always the AI Tinkerers event next Wednesday as well, which is for those people who like building things. It's a builders community, a makers community kind of thing. And there's no presentations at those. It's just people kind of showing what they're doing with it and what they're building, and just getting feedback and thoughts on that stuff. And that one's in Bedford next week.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I could drive some more attendance there for you.
I appreciate
You'll need a bigger building very shortly.
Jay, if it makes you feel any better, when I finished my presentation yesterday, I let people know like we're still early in all this. Like no one's got any of this figured out yet. We're all learning as we go, and we go down one path and see that path doesn't work. We're going down other paths, and when someone says they got something totally figured out, that's not like
red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag. Red flag.
Yeah, the key is just to get on a path. Get on one of the paths and then see where it goes. You know what I mean? Which we're starting to do, which is good. But yeah, Phil, this is awesome. Thanks for joining. It was great.
Of course. No, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed this. This has been fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
See ya.
All right.